Hello and welcome back to KeyDigital's Compass Control online training module. This is C1 Part 4, Compass Control Hardware. Up to this point, we've covered the introduction to KeyDigital and Compass Control brand with the curriculum introduction. We've introduced you to the Compass Control system as a whole. And then in C1 Part 3, we went ahead and introduced you to the Compass Control software. So that naturally leads us to the Compass Control hardware here in C1 Part 4. Now, hardware is what we've done for the past 15 years at this point here at KeyDigital. So the Compass Control system became actually very natural to us. And in fact, because we come from the hardware background, we actually were able to integrate the control system into many of the pieces of the KeyDigital video hardware offering. So as we go through this hardware, you're actually going to be introduced to our Digital IQ Lite series matrix switchers, which are digital video matrix switchers with master controllers built in. So that's the Digital IQ, and it's really just a result of us coming from this background, and we'll explain that more in depth as we go on. And of course, the hardware is not limited to the video that the Compass Control integrates with. This hardware is going to enable you to interface with all sorts of integration and automation devices, not just audio-visual equipment. So Compass Control really unifies all of this. So without further ado, let's jump into the hardware. Beginning with perhaps the most important piece of the Compass Control hardware assortment, the MC1000. It stands for Master Controller. MC1000 is actually our second generation master controller, where the first generation master controller of the Compass Control family was the KD-MC2500. The KD-MC1000 is better. It's a little smaller, it's a little less expensive, and it's a lot smarter, actually, than the KD-MC2500. So altogether, it is a more sophisticated part at a better price point, which is typically what you folks would like to do, what you'd like to go for, what you integrators are looking for. We took a little bit of a different approach when going with the MC1000. As I mentioned in the last video, KD-MC1000 is built a little more like a Swiss Army knife. We noticed that a lot of the applications that the KD-MC2500 was installed in, the 2500 was left with a few open ports. So we streamlined the connectivity a little bit for the KD-MC1000, and we also added the Zigbee port, as you see on the back of this unit. So let's go ahead and walk through all of the connectivity here. On the front of the MC1000, you have dead center the IR learning window. This is a very nice feature where for Compass Control there is not an externally sold IR learner, and it is built in to the master controller. What that does mean is you, as an organization or as a programmer, should go ahead and get an MC1000 in your possession, because chances are, no matter how many codes we have in our library, if you'd like to, you're going to need to create IR codes, and that is done through the learning window of the MC1000. You also, on the face of the MC1000, have 6 status indicating LEDs, where you see them labeled 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And in fact, those are great troubleshooting devices. Those LED lights are activated by voltage that passes through the 6 multifunction ports on the rear of the MC1000. So it's a great troubleshooting device, because sometimes folks call us up and say, hey, I'm pressing this button, it's not working. Well, one of the first things we could do is say, well, do you have a blinking IR emitter? If they do, then great. If they don't, then we go to the next step, or even if it's an RS-232 controlled device, of course, there's no blinking RS-232 DB9 connector. So then we go ahead and we say, okay, well, let's look at the light, the LED light on the front. Does it blink? And if it blinks, then great. that means we're actually sending something. If it doesn't blink, then we have to look at that button and see, is there in fact a command on that button? So those indicator LEDs are quite nice. We also have the program USB port. It's a USB micro, the rounded type micro, although I believe that this picture is of a prototype unit, and so that looks more like the mini versus the micro, but it is in fact micro. On the rear of the unit, we have the 6 multifunction ports. Those multifunction ports are called MCP35, stands for multifunction compass port or multifunction control port, 3.5 millimeter. They're very multifunctional, they're very flexible. They can be configured to be IR, bidirectional RS-232, a voltage sensor, or a voltage trigger. In fact, there are 7 functions of the MCP35 ports, which we'll show you. There is a relay with 3 ports, so it can be configured to normally open or normally closed. There is the Zigbee I/O, which is another 3.5 millimeter. This is a pretty unique 3.5 millimeter in the fact that it is a 3-ring or 4-conductor 3.5, so it's not a standard stereo or mono. It is a 3-ring or 4-conductor, and when you're using the KD ZRC300, the Zigbee remote control, it of course has to communicate to the Zigbee receiver, the ZRX200. We'll show you all of these. And so that ZRX200 plugs in there where you have bidirectional communication, so that's transmit, receive, ground. That's 3 of the 4 conductors, and the 4th conductor is actually power, to power that Zigbee receiver. So your RS-232 can also go there though if you're not using Zigbee. If you're just using an iOS system, for example, we include a 3-ring 4-conductor to DB9 male cable on that. And then you have your network connection, your RJ45. Now again, if you have an iOS, all iOS based system, then that IP, that RJ45 just connects into your router, and the iPads communicate bidirectionally with the MC1000 that way through the network. And if you're controlling an IP device, then those codes again would just go straight from the iPad to those IP controllable devices. However, if you're using the MC1000 along with our handheld remote control, well, that handheld remote can actually control IP devices. And how it does that is not by executing IP commands itself at the Zigbee handheld remote. Instead, the button press is relayed to the MC1000, and if that button press happens to contain an IP command, then that command gets executed now out of the MC1000 through the network router, and it will hit the intended IP address and port number. So that's how that works, and now the MC1000, as I mentioned before, is more intelligent, has more capabilities than the MC2500, which was not able to, for example, execute IP commands out of its IP port. So looking at those 7 potential functions of the MCP35 ports, IR actually could be bidirectional. Why? IR out, IR in, it's just the signal on the tip. RS-232 bidirectional. You have the tip is your transmit, so the T with the T, and the ring is the receive, R with R. It's a nice way to remember that. And then your ground, so it's a standard connection. It's nothing proprietary there. Voltage sensing, you'll want, of course, that voltage also on the tip. Voltage triggering, also on the tip. And then PCM, that's digital video or composite video sensing, also with the signal on the tip. So this is a nice functionality, PCM or composite video sensing. This is a way that you're able to collect status, for example, from a simplistic IR display. How do you know if an IR television on the wall is on or off? Well, if it has a analog video connector, for example, composite or component video, that should be alive with a 2-volt peak-to-peak signal, and then we could collect information knowing that it's on. In the case that, you know, the kid comes home from school and you have this elaborate macro set up that when the room turns on, the TV turns on, the audio system turns on, etc., etc. But if the kid comes home from school and just presses power on the side of the monitor, that kind of defeats that whole macro from occurring. So in this case, you can collect information. Is it on Okay, let's go ahead and activate the macro. So now into the KD ZRC300. This is our handheld remote control. Stands for Zigbee remote control. That's the ZRC. So this is KeyDigital's first handheld remote control for the Compass control system. We're very excited about it because we really see this as the perfect fit for the channel surfer applications in the home theater, media rooms, or master bedroom. But also, now that this has been demonstrated and displayed at the commercial trade show Infocom, we found that this is in fact a great fit as a backup remote control in those conference room applications, for example. Now, it's not too fancy. As you can see, there's no LED display on it. That's fine. We wanted to really hit the everyman with this remote. The system is priced very, very competitively, which you'll be able to find out more information about. And so we designed this with that single zone application in mind. Again, the home theater or the simple living room, media room, master bedroom type application with this. Because remember, as we mentioned in the previous C1 training video, currently the MC1000 supports only one unique Zigbee project load per MC1000. So it's really designed for that single zone application, not so much designed to be a traveling remote or anything. And it has that typical universal remote type layout and functionality, and it even supports line of sight IR. But what separates this from that basic kind of universal remote, of course, is the fact that this can also tie in with the KD MC1000 hardware. And you could program it in Compass Navigator to have any amount of macros on your button presses. So for example, if you want to press the cable box button there, you could make that so it's not only determining that now when I press, 200, that 200 applies to the cable box. You could make that cable box blue button that you see at top center, select the cable box on your television, or select the appropriate input on the television, select the appropriate input on the AV receiver, change the cable box to channel 200, etc., etc., etc. And one step further, not only being able to program it and have the commands executed via line of sight IR or through the MC1000, furthermore, we have the ability to control and interface with RS-232 devices and IP devices. So for example, if I press the blue security button and then press the A button in the bottom of the remote to arm the system, and the D button at the bottom center of the remote to disarm a security system, I could do that. I could program a macro in there with your security code to interface with an RS-232 controllable system. Or if I press the LSH button, the blue button at the top right-hand side, LSH, and then if I press light, for example, from the center of the remote, and I press the up or down arrows, I could incrementally ramp my IP controllable lighting system. Or I could press LSH and then light and 80 and then enter to do a discrete level set of that lighting level, of that lighting system. I could even control my thermostat through this handheld remote, through this universal handheld remote, because of the ability to interface with the MC1000 and control RS-232 or IP devices. And I think about it from time to time and I say, well, how often is that going to be used? And you as an integrator, what's the best form of advertising? Word of mouth. Well, you better believe if you interface the Compass system with an Aprilaire, for example, one of our partners, Aprilaire thermostat, and you import the module so that you can control that thermostat from this remote, you better believe that when the friends and family come over, they're going to say, not only does this thing control the audio video system, but check this out. If I press LSH and then HVAC, I could adjust my cool and heat set points that's going to be one thing that they're always going to be bragging about. So it's a really, really powerful remote as a result of that hardware that Compass Control offers with the MC1000. You charge it via the USB micro port that's at the bottom of the remote. And those blue device buttons illuminate, telling you what device is currently selected anytime you press a button or if you move, if movement is sensed on the remote. And then finally, the KD-ZRX200 is the Zigbee receiver. And we've seen the system design diagrams before, so you know that the Zigbee remote control, the ZRC300, how does it communicate to the MC1000? What button is pressed? It is through this Zigbee transceiver here, the KD-ZRX200. It's actually bidirectional. You see the stereo port on the rear of the ZRC300. And that is for four conductor, 3-ring, once again, as before, transmit, receive, ground, and power. So you don't need to power this up locally. It actually comes with a 10-foot 3-ring, 4-conductor wire. But if you need to to move around the location of this Zigbee receiver, you're actually able to fabricate your own cable up to 100 feet long there, using, say, a Cat6 wire or Cat5e wire to make that cable up to 100 feet long. And it has a nice little blue light in it that will blink almost like an IR sensor blinks whenever it receives information. Anytime you press a button on the ZRC300, you're able to, you'll see that button press has been detected when this ZRC300 is paired with the ZRX200. Now, I've presented to you all 3 SKUs, and there is one master SKU as well. So you could purchase these a la carte, or you could purchase the master SKU. That master SKU is the KD CC Kit 1000. CC Kit, like Compass Control Kit. And when you actually purchase this as a kit, you will currently save $100 off of the retail price. So it'll enable you to increase your profit margin by purchasing the CC Kit 1000. And how do you know if you should purchase the CC Kit or maybe just start with the MC1000 and add on from there? Well, pardon the pun, but if you at least even have a remote possibility that your client's going to want the handheld remote, then you should go ahead and purchase that CC Kit 1000. Additionally, we have the CC XR200. That's contact closure, compass control to relay 200 there. It is a contact closure, a 2-port contact closure, not a 3-port contact closure. And if you'd like to make it a 3-port contact closure, you're able to do that by bridging 2 units and making a common wire. And so one side, just as the silkscreen informs you, connects to the master controller on the 3.5 millimeter MCP35 port with a mono to mono setting when that MCP35 port is set as a voltage trigger. Okay, on is if voltage is alive, I believe that makes the CC XR200 open, and if the voltage is off, the trigger voltage is off, then the relay is closed. And finally, as far as your standard hardware is concerned, it is something that KeyDigital does not resell, but it is a partner of ours, as from time to time, integrators have asked us if we have a way to control a device via Wi-Fi. And for us at KeyDigital and Compass Control, reliability has always been number 1. So we've kind of stayed away from Wi-Fi and instead worked with hardwire for all the control ports. And of course, our MC1000 is very cost effective, but if you have no wire no wire available, I should say, to the place that you'd need those control ports located with an MC1000, then we do interface with Global Cache's ITAC series Wi-Fi devices. They could be added into the system as control hardware. They do not constitute being a master controller, though. In other words, you still need a master controller in the system, a KeyDigital master controller in the system. What constitutes a KeyDigital master controller? KDMC2500, KDMC1000, or any of our Digital IQ matrix switchers with the master controller built inside. That's KD-HD 4x4, 6x6, and 8x8 Lite, which we'll introduce you to here in just a moment. But these are a pretty neat device where they work over Wi-Fi, and we support the model WF2CC, which is Wi-Fi to contact closure, WF2SL, which is Wi-Fi to serial or RS-232, and finally WF2IR, which is Wi-Fi to RS-232. So now let's get into that Digital IQ series. These are our matrix switchers, digital video matrix switchers with 4K support, included receive extender balance, and a built-in master controller. You see, these matrix switchers here are an all-in-one kit. So we have the three SKUs. KD-HD 4x4 Lite is a matrix switcher with 4 receive extenders in the box. KD-HD 6x6 Lite, a 6x6 matrix switcher with 6 receive extenders in the box. And KD-HD 8x8 Lite with an 8x8 matrix switcher with the 8 receivers in the box to complement those matrices. But not only are they traditional matrix switchers with 4K support and the receive extenders in the box, the receive extenders are powered over HD-Base-T, but they have that built-in master controller. In fact, the KD-HD 4x4 Lite is a 16-port master controller. The KD-HD 6x6 Lite is a 26-port master controller built in, and the KD-HD 8x8 Lite is a 32-port master controller built in to that matrix. So how do we get to these numbers? 16, 26, and 32. Let's take the KD-HD 8x8 Lite, for example, that 32-port built-in compass control master controller. We start with this block of 3.5mm ports. These are similar to the MCP35, where they are stereo ports. They could be IR, RS-232, or voltage triggers. That bidirectional, that RS-232 is bidirectional, in fact, because they are stereo ports. Then each of your HD-Base-T RJ45 output connections, which marries in with the KD Cat HD 250 POHRX, that's the model number of the receive extender. Again, they're included in the box. Each of those receive extenders also has a stereo control port on it for IR, RS-232, or the voltage triggering. Then we do something really cool and really unique. Your 8 HDMI inputs and your 8 HDMI outputs are also multifunction control ports when you use KD IQ Jump 12 FM with those ports. Those IQ Jump cables are unlike anything you've probably ever seen before. They are male to female HDMI jumpers, 12 inches long, as the name implies, with a 3.5mm stereo dongle on the cable. So HDMI video and audio passes through, but we insert IR, bidirectional RS-232, or the voltage over one of the lines of the HDMI. And it's not a special pinout, and it's not a special wire. In fact, this will work with any HDMI cable and the IQ Jump 12 FM inserted right there locally at the equipment rack, or perhaps at the end of a long run. And we'll show you another example of that in a moment, or a system example. And then finally, that brings us to 32. 8 plus 8 plus 8 plus 8. But how about that DB9 connector that's sitting there on the matrix? Well, you've always used that to control our matrix switchers in the past, haven't you? Well, of course, you don't need to use that when the master controller is built into this matrix switcher, which means that DB9 connection becomes the bonus port. So in fact, 16, 26, and 32 port master controllers built into the Digital IQ series matrices, when you add the bonus, becomes 17, 26, and 33 port master controller. Now there are some limitations. There are two limitations to be precise that the Digital IQ series presents you with as compared to the KD-MC1000. The limitation, there is no voltage sensing. As I mentioned, every of these 32 or 33, 32 ports can be IR, bidirectional RS-232, or a voltage trigger, but not a voltage sensor. And finally, there is no Zigbee I/O port as on the MC1000, which means if you plan to use the KD-ZRC300 handheld remote, you still need the KD-MC1000, even if you have the opportunity to also install the Digital IQ series light matrix switchers, and that's fine. You could have a mixture. Remember, as we go back, you could have as many master controllers as in the system as you would like, and that includes mixing IQ series with MC1000s or MC2500s, our previous master controller, for that matter. So here's that sample crude drawing of a typical installation scenario. The Digital IQ series, it just makes sense to use that IQ Jump 12 FM to control those sources as well. Not only pass the video and audio through, but use that to insert and extract those control signals, right? Just makes sense. And we sell those in packs of 4. You may have external devices that perhaps aren't even inputs or outputs to the video matrixing system. That's fine. Use the 3.5 millimeter block, what we call the expansion IOs, to control those devices. Then on your RJ45 outputs, you have the receive extender at each display, sending video and audio, and then also controlling the display. Perhaps one of your displays is close enough, you just use an HDMI cable to connect to, as we see in one of these displays. And then finally, maybe you need to use one of our extended distance, extended range HDMI, HD-based-T extender sets. For example, here we have depicted the Cat HD 500 Pro. You just send the video and audio in on the HDMI, and you would pull that IR or RS-232 out and feed in to the respective IR or RS-232 port on that transmitter, which then comes out on the receiver on the RS-232 DB9 or IR port. And that's all possible because Compass Control is an IP-based system. The iPad is able to communicate via the network into the TCP/IP port of the matrix switcher. And again, the Digital IQ matrix switcher, as a master controller just becomes a relay box for all of that information in the brain of the system that is the iOS device. Now a little more information about that KD IQ Jump 12 FM. We sell them in packs of 4, and they're not only used with the Digital IQ series, adding 16, 12 or 8 ports to the 8x8, 6x6, and 4x4 respectively, but you could even use them on their own. You could put one on one side of your HDMI cable and just connect into the 3.5 millimeter port as a way to kill CEC through the system. So if you have a CEC problem where you turn on a TV or turn off a TV and the Blu-ray player turns off, well, plug into the 3.5 millimeter here on this cable and that's not going to pass. You could even use it to embed and extract external control, digital audio, mono audio into and out of those ports. We don't recommend stereo audio because stereo audio would require a special, or the wire in the HDMI cable is not twisted like stereo audio cable should be. So there might end up being a little bit of noise if you were to do that. But how would you do that? You'd put one of these IQ jumps on both ends of the cable. So say it's one of those fireplace wall hanging applications, and you don't have an extra wire ran to the display, and the customer says, oh, now I need you to do something else here. I need you to control this display, and we don't have the wire for control. Well, you can actually feed in from the master controller into one of these 3.5 connectors on one side of the IQ jump, have the female side connect to the HDMI cable, however long that may be, put another one of these on the other end, and pull that control right out, just like you would do with the digital audio or mono audio. You could do even making an audio return channel, kind of a fake audio return channel, an external audio return channel from the display to whatever's connected on the other end. So it's pretty neat. So that is the hardware, which falls into the Compass Control family. Very, very important that you familiarize yourself with those, of course. The KD-MC1000 master controller. Those MCP35 ports are just the most flexible control ports that we have, or that are out there in the marketplace. And keep your eyes open as Compass Control continues to develop. We'll be introducing some hardware with RJ45 connectors as well. So those will be called MCP45s. The MC1000 has that Zigbee port on it, which makes it the only master controller which can integrate when you plan to use the ZRC300 and the ZRX200. So those three items together, MC1000, ZRC300, ZRX200, complete the CC Kit 1000 system hardware. And of course, if you're going to have an iOS device, or as many iOS devices as you'd like, you always need the CSL, the Compass Software License. Remember that from C1 Part 3. The Compass Software License is needed to activate the iPad. So really with that Digital IQ series, that's an all-in-one solution. You just need a $100 license to activate your iPad, and now you can control our video matrix and 32 connected devices, IR, RS-232, not to mention however many IP devices as you might need. And that's what makes the Digital IQ series so exciting. It's really all in there for you, and you just need $100 and some programming time to bring it to life. So that summarizes what we went through here in C1 Part 4. We thank you very much for viewing, and we look forward to seeing you next time in C1 Part 5.